Good evening, everyone. I am Ankit, and you're watching the Indian Express analysis, which goes live every day at 4 p.m. on StudyIQ IAS English channel. In our today's discussion, we'll cover important news and articles from our favorite, the Indian Express newspaper, and we'll start off our today's discussion with the article on why is census critical for economic development. You may have heard census does many things. It promotes decentralization, it promotes delimitation, it also going forward will promote women reservation in legislatures. But how is census relating to economic development? I will tell you this in our today's discussion. This is from an article that appeared in the explain section of our Indian Express newspaper today, right? And this is, you'll see that this article is so beautiful. It correlates the aspects of GS paper 1 with GS paper 2 and GS paper 3, and going forward in the mains examination, you'll see that increasingly there is a trend of interlinked questions, that you can't attribute that one particular question to a subject. It might be interlinked with other subjects, as we'll witness with this article, which relates with population in GS paper 1, it relates with governance, that is GS paper 2, and it relates with economic growth and development, that is GS paper 3, right? So this is the beauty of our today's discussion, that we'll discuss these kind of articles in great detail. In the second article, we'll understand what are small finance banks. Now you understand in India there is a concept of differential banks like payment banks, wholesale banks, small finance banks, regional rural banks. So what kind of work does small finance bank do? How are they different from universal banks like SBI, like ICICI, and what are the regulatory burden on these banks from the RBI side? We'll also understand this in a great detail before understanding what are the criteria that have been laid out by RBI, so that going forward these small banks can be converted into large or larger universal banks, right? So everything from economy and banking perspective relating to small finance bank, we are going to discuss in great detail, and this is relevant from GS paper 3 perspective, right? So this is the second article. In the third article, we'll be covering about the state of the world population report that has been published by UNFPA for the year 2025. What kind of data does it give us? What kind of interpretation can we make from such data, and what is the functioning of the body UNFPA? We'll understand this in our today's discussion, right? This is relevant mostly from GS paper 1 because it gives certain economic development and social development characteristics that are or that might be used in our exams or mains examination introduction and conclusion, right? Similarly, in the fourth article, we'll be covering about a very important grouping known as NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. What is the role and responsibility of this body? What are the members currently of this body, and what are the controversy relating to expansion of NATO membership, particularly in the context of Russia-Ukraine war? We'll try to understand in our today's discussion. Now, NATO is a grouping, is relevant from GS paper 2. You need to understand first of all right away that India is not a part of NATO, but how does or what kind of a challenge this body poses to the global world order, that becomes important from our exam. That is why it is important from GS paper 2 perspective, right? And in the last article, if the time permits, we'll discuss in great detail about the India-Europe relations, particularly the relations between India and EU. Why is this relation important? Because we understand because of Trump's policy, because of China's rise, there is a change in the world order, and how India and Europe, especially European Union, fit in this world order, that becomes important from our exams perspective, right? So obviously we'll understand this in great detail from our GS paper 2 perspective, because it deals with India's relation with important global powerhouses, and EU is one of the powerhouses. So this is the scope of our today's discussion. We'll try to complete all these 5 articles in 1 hour period, but if I miss out on the last article, need not worry, I'll cover it tomorrow, okay? So that is sorted. Let me see the comments. Shushmita, good evening. Harshita, Rishi, Kanchan, Omkar, Shuddhamati, Thakre, good evening. Tony, Akshay, Yashi, Jui, Shiv, Dhakkan Babu, namaste to you. Everybody, good evening. Now there was this accident of a plane crash that happened near Ahmedabad. It was carrying 240 plus passengers. So I am a bit disturbed knowing about that thing, right? So please allow me some leverage today, but I'll try my best to cover our today's discussion, okay? Let us start our today's discussion, but first the notes of the session, they will be available on my Telegram channel. You know the link, ATS Live. What you can do is search the words ATS Live on the top right hand corner of your app. Alternatively, you can also scan the QR code and this will take you directly to our or to our Telegram channel. There you can subscribe to the channel and download the notes which will be made available after the completion of this particular session, right? So subscribe to it if you still haven't. Yes, Gagan, it is a disturbing news. So let us start our today's discussion with this first article. It talks about why the Census 2027 is a critical for India's economic growth and development. So that is why census exercise, you understand, it's a population enumeration exercise. So how will a population enumeration exercise promote India's economic growth and development? That is an interlinked part. So you understand, that is why the beauty of this article, it correlates aspects of GS paper 1 with governance, that is GS paper 2, because you understand changing the patterns of migration, changing the patterns of urbanization automatically has an impact on our governance. So that is why it is first related to GS paper 2, and economic growth and development, this is a part of GS paper 3 syllabus. So that is why these kind of interlinked topics are very important from our exams perspective. So these kind of article gives you lot of information, lot of arguments that you can use in your daily life, not just exams, right? So let us understand the context of our today's discussion. First, it says that the government of India recently announced that the next census, which was originally planned for 2021, will be now conducted in two phases in 2026 and 2027. And the effective date of this will be done from, so the population figures that will be posted from the census exercise will tell India's population figure as it will be on March the 1st, 2027. Now you understand, India has undergone a census every decade since 1881, irrespective of whatever sovereign authority were ruling over us, whether it was independent India or whether we were under the British colonial rule, and irrespective of which political party is in power. But this exercise was stopped first time in the 2021, because you understand, this was the time when not just India but entire world was under the grasp of a global pandemic. So because of that disruption, the census could not be held in 2021. Now this will be held and India will witness a new census after 16 years. So understand, this will be a large change from the last census that happened in the year 2011. So what kind of changes can we expect? What kind of metrics can we expect? And how will this lead to changes in our governance and changes in our economic growth? That remains to be seen. And I will let you know in our today's discussion. Now first, census is very important from economy perspective and also from policy making perspective. How? Because the national census, it provides us fundamental statistical basis for all types of surveys and analysis that happens in the country. How do they provide us with the base level data? I will let you know, okay? Now the census, it isn't just a complete enumeration of all Indians, rather it captures a lot more details. For example, it collects data on age, it collects data on gender, what is the family's economic status, what is the level of unemployment in the country, what kind of languages do people speak, what is the education level of the population, how many people in India are living with disability, and what are the trends relating to migration. All these different types of data are also captured in the census, in addition to just counting how many Indians are there, right? And in providing all this information, the census not only tells the story of how India has changed in the past 10 years, or in this case, it will tell us the data how much India has changed in the last 16 years, but it also tells us the pattern that how India might change in the next decade or so, right? So it gives us the current data, and it also gives us the insight of how population will be affected in the times to come, right? So this is why census exercise is so important, way beyond what people think. This is not just random counting of how many people are there or head counting of people. It collects many more data which might be relevant in one aspect or the another aspect of policy making, right? So this is why census is so important. First, census can be utilized to gauge the levels of inflation, and accommodately, the RBI would want to change its monetary policy. Now we understand RBI changes the policy rates based on the decision made by Monetary Policy Committee. And what kind of metric does Monetary Policy Committee use? It uses the data of Consumer Price Index to ascertain what is the level of inflation in the country, right? And Consumer Price Index also, it is figured, or it has been made depending upon country's consumption pattern. Now you understand the weightage of food products in CPI currently is 46%. So it tells us that almost half of the spending that normal households make in our country, that is made on food products, right? But going forward, this consumption pattern might change. For suppose if in future India or people living in India reduce the amount of spending that they do on food and they increase the amount of spending on education or health or any other factor, you can understand this will lead to changes on how CPI will be judged, right? So if we do not change this consumption related data, how will we be able to assess the levels of inflation properly in the country? And the consumption surveys based on which metrics like CPI have been conducted, that is Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, all of these are based on data that has been collected on census, because census tells us what kind of people or how many people are living in urban area, how many people are living in rural area, what is their economic status, and their economic status and the place they are living in, it also determines how much money are they willing to spend on food, or how much money are they living or are they willing to spend on transportation. So ultimately all the surveys, all the consumption surveys that has been conducted by RBI, by private bodies, the source of their understanding, the source of their data are borrowed from the parent census data. So that is why all surveys that has been used to draft metrics like CPI, all of them are dependent on the census data. So if outdated census data is used, you understand inflation may not be estimated properly by RBI, and this will lead to incorrect monetary policy, right? So suppose if RBI thinks that people are using or spending 46% of their total money on food, it might see that food inflation will have a big bearing on overall inflation in the country. But what if actual spending on food is just 30%? This will lead to misalignment of monetary policy. Like monetary policy will have unnecessarily high interest rate, and you understand unnecessarily high interest rate may also suppress the chances of your economic growth. So this is how inflation control, this is how prevailing interest rates of RBI are also indirectly affected by the data which is published by census. So that is why we need updated census, so that all the other surveys that are made or that are done using the census data are also updated. Understand? Any doubts up till now? Otherwise I'll move forward. This is a very important article, and understanding this article will be very good for you in your overall preparation phase. Now usually I don't stop in between to ask you what kind of, do you understand it? But if I'm stopping in between to ask you whether you're understanding or not, that means this article is very important. Well, if you won't comment, how would I know? No comment, so I'll move forward, okay? Now the understanding migration is also very important when it comes to India, and there has been many misunderstanding among people about our migration pattern, right? First, there is a popular perception that India primarily witnessed migration from one state to another state. Suppose you might be hearing people living in Bombay, people living in southern states, most of them, or at least the working class, they hail from northern states like UP, they hail from northern states like Bihar, right? But this is an incorrect metric. Why? Because most of migration that happens in India is not that is happening from one state to another. It only accounts for 12% of total internal migration. Rather, most of India's migration is essentially local, which means it happens between one district to another district in a same state, or sometimes it may even happen from a particular village in one district to another village in that same district, right? So this is what local migration is, and this constitutes a larger portion of migration as compared to migration from one state to another state. And barely 4% of India's total population has participated in an interstate migration. And this provides us that migration idea, something that people perceive about migration, is very incorrect, right? Similarly, if you look at it, most of the internal migration migration that happens, it happens from one rural area to another rural area. What do you think may be the core reason for this particular factor? Can anyone let me know? That is 48%, almost half of the total migration happens not from rural to urban area or not from one state to another state, it happens from a rural to rural area. And the second biggest category is also the fastest growing one, that happens from one urban area to another area. So this is how the migration is one of the least understood variables in India. And how have I come to this conclusion? This was a data from 2011 census. And the truth is, this data might have been changed in the last 16 years since the census have not been conducted. So that is why understanding what is the actual truth about India's internal migration might have undergone a complete change since the last census of 2011. And that is why only a nationwide census now can help capture how the reality of migration has shifted. And you know what is the major cause of this biggest factor of migration which happens from one rural area to another rural area? It is the factor of marriage. So if you understand, whenever a woman is married in a rural area, she automatically shifts to her in-laws, which might be located in urban, some other rural area, right? So this is the biggest factor that leads to almost half of the total migration in India. So understanding how the migration works, what are the patterns of migration, is it leading actually to increasing urbanization or not, we will understand this with the next census data, right? Similarly, it will also have an impact of how urbanization trends happen in India. Now, you may have understood that as India is going or becoming more developed, there is a trend of increasing urbanization, and this is even quite easily witnessed in the cities or in our urban areas. So even if you are living in urban areas for last 10 years, you might have noticed that there has been an increase in population in your city, much more prominently in metro cities like Delhi, Noida, Gurgaon, right? So this is because of the fact that India is growing, and this has led to more urbanization. But even today, despite a well-known established fact that there is an increased urbanization, we do not have clarity of how urbanized India is. What is the range of population that is living in cities as compared to rural areas? So some estimates, they say 30% of our population lives in cities, some say it is 70%. So understand, there is no perfect or no accurate data about this fact. So, and this also changes because we follow different definitions of urbanization. Some semi-urbanized area, in one metric they are called as rural area, in another metric they are called as urban area. And accurate knowledge of urbanization is very critical when you have to understand how India's GDP is growing. And because of that, Niti Aayog has estimated that 60% of India's GDP, it is coming from cities, and Indian cities, it only constitute 3% of our total country's land. So therefore, understanding the pattern of urbanization, understanding the exact levels or population or percentage of urbanization is very important. How will we understand this? Through census, right? And you understand, census also provides us many different demographic and socioeconomic data which is needed from governance perspective also. How it will help in governance perspective, let me tell you, right? Now first, government needs to decide and implement their welfare schemes, and they can target their welfare schemes quite well if they have accurate population level data. For example, you may have heard about a very popular scheme, One Nation, One Ration Card scheme. What happens in this scheme? That people, especially the migrant families, they are provided with ration card. And suppose if the male member of a family is relocating somewhere else for work related purposes and he's leaving his family behind in his rural area, both of them are available to get food grains from their respective PDS shops using One Nation, One Ration Card, and this promotes interoperability of benefits. And how will the government actually distribute the food in different PDS shops? By understanding what is the population migration data. So this is how government can target its welfare scheme quite well if it has a particular and precise data. Similar, it can monitor inequality across regions. How do we know that one region in our country is more equal or has more higher income as compared to another region? We will get to know this from our population data, and then we can also assess how the migratory patterns will be. Automatically, you can understand the regions that has lower economic growth, people living in those regions would automatically shift to seek work employments in a more developed region, right? So that is why you'll see people from UP, people from Bihar, they go to southern states, they go to western states, they even go to northern states to seek employment. So this highlights that northern part of our country is lesser developed, and we will get an accurate data through census. Similarly, government can even track progress relating to health, education, employment, because all these data are also captured from census, and accordingly the respective state governments can increase budgetary or decrease the budgetary provisions according to their needs. Also, it might lead to fundamental changes on how urban areas are managed in the country. First, you understand, as there will be increased urbanization in India, more and more areas will be coming under what are known as urban local bodies. So you need to increase the capacity of urban local bodies. Areas that were earlier under the Panchayati Raj institutions, now if they have become urban, you need to change the character of their local bodies. From making or from an earlier Panchayati Raj institution, you have to transform them into urban local bodies. Similarly, you have to give them funds also from the state consolidated fund, and you can provide these funds only after you know how many people are living there. Also, infrastructural planning, like how transportation, like how housing will be done, that also depends upon the levels of economic development, that also depends on level of urban areas. How many of you see there is an increased metro cities in rural areas? Not so much, right? Metros are majorly located in urban areas and at those places where population density is very high. So all of this development can be done after understanding the urban development, and it also in a way affects national integration and social cohesion. Why? Because one of the negative aspects of migration that we have seen in India is the discrimination that happens based on our region, discrimination that happens based on the languages we speak, and this is one of the negative aspects about migration. So understanding what kind of languages do people speak in different cities, that will also help the government maintain social cohesion. They can understand if there are different kinds of people living in, the probability of social cohesion or probability of such disputes might also increase. So the police will be trained accordingly and countered accordingly so as to counter these effects on national integration. So this is how understanding the changes in migration, understanding the changes in population helps in economic growth, helps in targeting welfare schemes, helps in governance, helps in social cohesion. So all of this is relevant from GS paper 1, GS paper 2 and GS paper 3 syllabus, and not just government data, even for planning for other aspects also, that is very important. For example, designing climate change policies, deciding how the environment and resource allocation strategies, for that also you need to understand, because you know rural areas or urban areas are more receptible or more susceptible to instances of urban flooding. So you need to ascertain how urban areas have increased, what are the land use changes have been made. Similarly, private firms, they also use census based data to access consumer demand, right? So what kind of, suppose if more tourists are going to say Himalayan states, automatically the demand of Maggi would increase in Himalayan states, right? Similarly, people used to take bullet to Ladakh, right? So now Royal Enfield, which is a manufacturer of bullet, can deliver more spare parts to areas of Ladakh. Understanding why? Because more tourists are going to Ladakh. So this is kind of a data even the private companies use to assess the consumer demand to distribute their products more effectively, such that distribution of Maggi in Himalayan states, right? What is social cohesion? Well, social cohesion is how well or how unite our society is. Suppose if everyone in a society belongs to one religion, one caste, or speaks one language, automatically that society will be more united, as compared to in a diverse society where unity might be differed because of your differences in your cultures, right? So you need to understand the metric before you can understand the levels of cohesion in a society. And for any developed country, societal cohesion is very important, especially if that country consists of people belonging to different religions, different caste and different languages, right? And how will we understand the differences? From census, and we can educate people accordingly, right? Any doubts in this article? Any doubts? Otherwise, I'll move forward. So this is how you need to read the newspapers. You need to have your whole mind open so that you know how one aspect of the syllabus can be linked with another, and that this is what separates toppers from the people who don't clear the exams. That you all know every fact, but how you are able to link one fact with the another, that is the difference, right? Now moving to this next article, it says that a small finance bank called as Jan Small Finance Bank, it has applied to RBI seeking the license of a universal bank. So here, what is a small finance bank becomes important. How is it different from universal banks? It becomes important. And also we need to understand how can small finance bank transition into universal bank. What are the RBI's criteria according to it, right? So this is what is important from our today's discussion. Now let us understand the context. Now Jan Small Finance Bank has submitted an application to the Reserve Bank of India seeking its approval for a voluntary transition from a small finance bank to a universal bank. Now earlier, small finance banks sought to become a universal bank upon completion of 5 years of their operation, and there was no need to meet any additional requirements or criteria for them to be classified as universal bank. But now RBI, it has set a definite eligibility criteria for this transition. So what is this criteria? But we'll also cover it, but first we'll need to understand what is a small finance bank and how different it is from a universal bank, right? So first let us understand the different types of banks in India. Now you understand commercial banks in India divided into two different types, commercial banks and cooperative banks. Commercial banks, their sole motive is to make profit. Cooperative banks, their sole motive is to ensure the best interest of their shareholders, that is the members of the cooperative, right? Further, commercial banks can also be divided based on their ownership, that is public banks, the majority ownership here is of government. Private banks, obviously the majority ownership is of private individuals and entities. Similarly, foreign banks are the banks which are subsidiaries of foreign banks, and differential banks are the ones that has been set up for a specific purpose. These can be regional purpose, that is regional rural banks. These banks have specific regional operation. Local area banks are more regional in nature. They are located in 1 or 2 districts only. Payment banks, these are basically banks that are more digitally oriented, whereas small finance banks, as we will discuss, these are banks catering to smaller or the marginalized section of our society, right? So let us discuss what functions of small finance bank is. Then we'll understand how is it different from usual commercial banks or also known as universal banks. So basically SBI, PNB, HDFC, ICICI, these are examples of full-fledged banks or universal banks, right? And to transition from a small finance bank to a universal bank, you need to fulfill certain criteria that has been set by the regulator of our banking system, that is RBI, right? So we'll understand everything in our today's discussion. Now first, few objectives. Why has small finance banks been set up, right? First, small finance banks has been set up to ensure financial inclusion, so that banking services in India are available to people living in rural areas, people living into small or semi-urban areas. Similarly, it also wants to expand microfinance. What is microfinance? Now suppose if you go and take loans from the banks for few thousands of rupees, that is an example of microfinance, right? And it provides affordable credit at a lesser interest and banking services, especially to people belonging to lower income groups. Now suppose if you are rich, why would you go to a bank to seek a loan for 10,000 rupees, right? So what kind of people will go to bank to seek loans for 5 to 10,000 rupees? Obviously poor people, right? So this ensures that even poor people have access to banking services, especially they can get lower even for smaller amounts. Also, it increases credit accessibility. Now you understand earlier there was this problem that poor people, banks did not offer loans to them because obviously banks thought that they won't be able to return the loan. But you need to incentivize finances, or you need to incentivize financial institutions that even people with lower income can also be getting the loans, like people belonging to small enterprises or owners of small enterprises, marginal farmers, and even micro entrepreneurs, right? So all these objectives are specifically filled for small finance banks so that they fulfill these kind of needs, ensuring financial inclusion, ensuring microfinance, and particularly enhancing the credit to different kinds of sections, particularly to lower income groups, right? Now the regulatory framework of small finance bank, that they were established as per the recommendation made by Nachiket More Committee of 2014. Just remember the name, right? It was Nachiket More Committee which recommended that in India you also need a differential bank known as small finance bank. It also recommended payment banks, right? So this was the committee responsible for differential banks. Now these banks, they are licensed and regulated by obviously RBI under differential banking licenses. It is registered under Companies Act of 2013, whereas the license to these banks are provided under Banking Regulation Act 1949. As these banks are also mentioned in the schedule of Banking Regulation Act, so that is why they are also known as scheduled commercial banks. So if the question comes, are financial banks or small finance banks or payment banks scheduled commercial banks, the answer is yes. Ashish Kumar sir, please include the Sunday's article also. Okay, I'll try my best. Okay, I usually do. Sundays mostly there are not so many important articles, but the most of the screenshots that you see from the website now, they are mostly from Sunday articles only. Now let us understand what kind of companies or what kind of people are eligible to open a small finance bank, right? Now first, to open a small finance bank, you need a minimum paid up equity capital of 200 crore rupees, and a small finance bank must allocate at least 75% of their total loans, and they must give it to priority sector. What is priority sector? Sectors like agriculture, sectors like renewable energy, which according to RBI needs more finances and are usually not provided with finances. They are categorized as priority sector. And to give funds, they need to give at least 75% of their total funds to priority sector. Similarly, at least half of their loan portfolio must consist of loans and advances, which is up to 25 lakh rupees. And what is the intention of this kind of a move? So that they give more amount of small loans rather than less amount of big loans, right? Similarly, what is another criteria? That they need to open at least 1/4 of their total branches in unbanked rural areas. And is FDI allowed? FDI is allowed, yes, up till 74%, that is 49% under automatic route, and rest, that is 25% under the government route. So yes, FDI is allowed up till 74% of the investment. So these are the eligibility and operational criteria of small finance bank, that they need to have at least the paid up capital of 200 crore rupees, 75% of their total loans should go to priority sectors, at least half of their loan portfolio must consist of loans not above 25 lakh rupees, whereas at least 1/4 of their total branches, that is 1 in every 4 branches, must be opened in unbanked rural areas. So these are the criteria that a small finance bank needs to fulfill. Now, what kind of activities are permitted and not permitted for a small finance bank? For example, obviously they can accept deposits, both saving deposits, current deposits, as well as fixed deposits. They can provide small ticket loans, primarily for microfinance and MSME loans. They can issue both debit card and credit card, and they can distribute financial products like insurance, like mutual funds and pension, but only after they get an RBI approval for the same. Now, what kind of activities are not permitted for small finance bank? They cannot engage directly in large scale corporate lending. They are not permitted to set up subsidiaries for non-banking financial services. For example, ICICI Bank, which is a universal bank, has a subsidiary for investing in stock market known as ICICI Direct. Similarly, PNB has a subsidiary, that is PNB Housing Finance, and this provides special funds for taking home loans. So these are subsidiaries of universal banks. Similarly, small finance banks, they can't have these kind of subsidiaries. Now also foreign operations of small finance banks are not allowed. You will see SBI has a branch in London, SBI has a branch in Dubai, but you won't hear that small finance banks, they have a branch in foreign locations, because it is not permitted here, right? So these are the restrictions that have been imposed on small finance banks, because these are catering to a certain section of people. These are not universal banks. Universal banks have many benefits which small finance banks don't. Small finance banks under are more restrictions because they are catering to a particular sector. That is why they have to give away 75% of their total loans to priority sector. Understood? Now I've created a table for you to understand the differences between small finance bank and universal finance bank. This is a very simple table which basically summarizes the discussion that we had today. Please look at this table after the session ends. This does not carry any additional information what I have told you up till now, right? Now let us understand what are the criterias for a small finance bank to transition into universal bank. I told you, right, they need to fulfill certain criterias before RBI will give them the license of universal bank. First criteria, that they need to have a satisfactory track record of a performance for a minimum of 5 years. Similarly, the shares of the small finance bank must be listed in a recognized stock exchange in India. Similarly, they need to have a minimum net worth of 1,000 crore rupees, and they need to have a net profit in the last 2 financial years before they file for the application to get a license of universal bank. Similarly, their gross NPA and net NPA needs to be less than or equal to 3 and 1%. Do you understand the difference between gross NPA and net NPA? Can anyone let me know in the comments? Well, nostro and vostro account is not related to foreign branches. I will discuss in great detail what is nostro and vostro in a separate discussion. Yes, the difference between GNPA and net NPA is the provisioning. Provisioning minus GNPA gets you an NPA, right? Similarly, small finance bank also are under the restriction that no addition of new promoters or changes in existing promoters are permitted, especially during the transition period. And small finance banks who have a diversified loan portfolio, they will be preferred to be considered as universal banks. So these are the criteria that has been laid out by RBI for small finance bank that they need to fulfill before they can get the license of universal bank. No, gross NPA minus provisioning is net NPA, right? This is the formula. Now let's see how many of you are able to solve this question. Well, small finance banks are granted license by RBI, correct? Under Reserve Bank of India Act, incorrect. I told you they are given license under Banking Regulation Act 1949. Small finance banks can accept only demand deposits and not time deposits. This is also incorrect. What are time deposits? These are fixed deposits and recurring deposits. They are able to give this. This is a criteria for payment banks, that payment banks can't extend loans and payment banks can't take the time deposits. Last, small finance banks are subjected to lower priority sector lending requirements than scheduled commercial banks. This is incorrect. Scheduled commercial banks have a requirement that they need to give 40% of their total loans to priority sector lending, whereas small finance banks, I told you, they are required to give at least 75% of their loans to priority sector lending, right? So this is higher, not lower. Therefore, all the 3 statements are incorrect. Option D, none, is your right answer. Yes, Reshma, not correct. Sarang, Shanika, Dakkan Babu, Shrishti, D option is correct. Yashi, D option is correct. No problem, Reshma. Now let us move to the third article. This article appeared in page 10 yesterday, right? Why are we discussing this article? Because this is important and yesterday we did not have time. So that is why please make sure, or please understand, no article will be left out. If I don't do it today, I for sure will do it tomorrow or day after tomorrow, right? So that is how you need to understand that if you're watching these sessions, you are not missing out on anything. Now, Coming back to our today's discussion, this article. Now, this article says that a new United Nations Population Fund, which is abbreviated as UNFPA, report has come. That is the State of World Population 2025, the Real Fertility Crisis report has been released. So, we'll first understand what this report says and then we'll understand how this organization functions, right? Now, first let us understand few highlights what the report says. It says India's population has reached to a figure of 146.39 crore as of April 2025, and according to them, now India almost is the most populous country, right? Now, India's total fertility rate, it has declined below the replacement level of population. Replacement level is 2.1, and now our TFR has reduced to 1.9, which means that long-term demographic shift will happen. What will be the long-term demographic shift? Can anyone let me know? Sure, third option once more. Let me go back. See, this statement says small finance banks are subjected to lower priority sector lending. What is the priority sector lending for commercial banks? This is 40% for universal and commercial banks, but for small finance bank, this is 75%. So, this should have been higher and not lower. That is why third statement is incorrect. Now, anyone, what is TFR? Can anyone let me know? Now, to keep your population at a stable rate, any country would want to achieve the figure of TFR of 2.1. Why 2.1? Because hum do, hamare do. So if a husband and wife gives, or they have two children, that means after the death of husband and wife, their two children will eventually replace them in the population. But 0.1 is also added to account for uneventful deaths, like early deaths of the parents, or if a child is born and they are not surviving. So that is why it has been said that if the TFR level is at 2.1, the country's population will be stabilized. Automatically, if you understand, if the TFR level is more than 2.1, that country will witness increase in population after some time. Similarly, if the TFR is less than 2.1, that means that going forward, the country's population will decline. Understand? So this says that now India's TFR has reduced to 1.9 and going forward, it will have a less amount of population, right? TFR basically is the amount of children that is born to an average woman in her childbearing age. That is the definition of TFR as per NCERT. Now, the population of India is also expected to peak at 170 crore before beginning to decline at around 40 years. Now, you'll understand that once you're saying that TFR will reduce, so how will our population increase to 170 crore? This means that now women are giving birth to less than 2 child on an average. But earlier, the child that have been born who are now getting into reproductive age, they will get to or they will reproduce more, right? So that is why, because of momentum, our population is expected to increase up till 170 crore and after that it will decline. Yes, Gagan, you are correct. Yes, Jui, you are correct. Now, another highlights of the report that this report emphasizes a real fertility crisis, and it says that millions are unable to realize their reproductive goal, not just due to overpopulation or just underpopulation. So what is this real fertility crisis? It says that 1 out of 3 adult Indians, that is 36%, they face unintended pregnancies, whereas 30% of them, they experience unfulfilled desire of having either more children or less children that they want. And notably, 23% of the population have faced both of these problems, whereas 68% of India's population is in working age, that is the age between 15 to 64 years of age, and it presents both an opportunity and a challenge for policymakers. What is an opportunity? An opportunity is that going forward, there will be more people who will be in their working age. So the amount of people who are dependent on these people automatically will reduce, right? So India will have more people who are willing to work rather than people who are just willing to eat and survive, right? Similarly, it also poses a challenge for policymakers. What is the challenge? Policymakers need to provide more jobs for people as there are more people in the working age, and if they are not able to provide the amount of jobs, then it will lead to problem of increasing unemployment, right? So this is how it poses both opportunity and change or challenge for policymakers. Understood? Any doubts? Now let us understand few more facts about this body, that is UNFPA. It was founded in 1967 as a trust fund and it became operational from 1969 onwards. Earlier it was named as UN Fund for Population Activities. Now it is known as UN Population Fund. It is a type of a subsidiary organ of United Nations General Assembly, and the motto of this organization is to ensure rights and choices for all. And the objectives or mission of this body is to deliver a world where pregnancy is wanted, childbirth is safe, and every young person potential is fulfilled. And the focus area of this organization is to ensure reproductive health, to ensure family planning, ensure maternal health, as well as ensure gender equality, right? So this is United Nations Population Fund. Now they have 3 goals for 2030 known as 3 zeros. First is zero unmet need for family planning, zero preventable maternal deaths, and zero gender-based violence and harmful practices. That includes female genital mutilation, that includes childbirth, etc. Right? So these are abbreviated as 3 zeros. Please remember them. This is important. Zero unmet need for family planning, zero preventable maternal deaths, and zero gender-based violence and harmful practices. Now, global and country level work is that UNFPA is active in 150 countries. It supports national planning and integration of population with their health and gender related data into policy. It publishes State of World Population Report once in every year, and it partners with government, civil service organizations as well as youth groups. Now the awards and days that are celebrated by this organization: UN Population Award is given by them. World Population Day is celebrated every year on 11th of July. So these are the facts that you need to remember. The most important fact about UNFPA is 3 zeros, that are goals that they want to achieve by 2030, right? Now this is the PYQ that appeared in last year's prelims. Total fertility rate in an economy is defined as what? Total fertility rate is TFR. What is the definition of TFR according to this particular question? Quickly. अब तो बोलोगे ही that because I have told you option D is the right answer. Now this is an older PYQ but very relevant from our today's discussion. Sarang, Gagan, Yashish, Shushmita, Jui, Rishi, all of you are right, option B. Now, the articles that we have covered now, these are very important from our exams perspective. More or so because you need to have your basics cleared before you can read and understand these kind of articles in the newspaper. To get your basics clear, what you need to do is opt for foundation courses, especially the Pratigya batches. The admissions for evening batches have started right now, and these courses are offered at a discounted rate right now at 28,999, and the admissions for these batches will close from 15th June onwards. To take admissions, what you need to do, go to our website. Once you go to our website, this kind of a page will open. This is an updated website now, right? So to opt for our courses, what you need to do, first you'll need to select English here, right? Because obviously you want to take your education in English. Suppose if you want to take education in bilingual, you can take English, or if you want to take in Hindi here, there's an option. I'd want the people who are not comfortable with Hindi or with bilingual teaching to opt for English batches by clicking English here in this drop down menu. As soon as you click here, the leftmost tile is the one that you need to click for taking admissions for the Pratigya batches, that is P2I foundation batches. Click on this buy now, right? As soon as you click buy now, see the course fees, it says that 35,999 is the course fees, but let me tell you a way where you can get discounts even on this amount, right? There's a code which must be flashing on the bottom half of the screen, right? Just you need to apply that. How? Let me tell you. Now, when you click on this buy now, on the right, there's an option to add promo code. Enter here ATS live, right? Let me change it to all caps, ATS live. As soon as you're done writing ATS live and click apply, right? As soon as you click apply, see the discount of 7,000 rupees is applicable, and the diamond course now is at 28,999. Platinum is at 23,999. Gold is at 13,999, right? And you're getting these discounted rate only after you're applying the code ATS live. among these three, obviously you can take any of these three courses which you want, but my recommendation to you is to opt for diamond batches. And why am I saying diamond batch? Because see, from this style you have multiple options or multiple benefits like mains residential program, prelims residential program. You'll be getting a selection box, which is a different books that you'll be requiring in your preparation. You'll be getting Margdarshan from the faculties themselves, and you'll also be getting two kinds of scholarship. First is that if you clear your prelims examination now, you'll be getting your full course fees refund, and if you top your monthly exams, you'll be getting a 11,000 rupees financial reward every month. So these are kinds of benefit that are exclusively available on diamond batches. That is why I'm telling you opt for diamond batches. If you want more details with the kind of features that are available in diamond and in other courses, this is the page that you can refer to after I upload my notes. Okay, now what is the time? I forgot my watch today. It's 4:54. Now it is almost 4:54. This is a big article. Two articles are left, right? So I will cover this NATO article in a separate video and will upload the notes for this, right? And the next article, India-European relation, we can cover it tomorrow, right? So NATO video, it will go live tomorrow at 8 AM, right? So please do not forget to watch this video. This is a big discussion and I'd want more time so that I do not hurry up in our today's discussion, right? Yes, Ashish, सुन लिया मैंने. I will incorporate Sunday's article also. If you have any suggestion, कौन सा article रह गया, you can even submit it in the group, okay? So I'll see you again tomorrow at 4 PM. You can watch this NATO wala video at 8 AM tomorrow morning, okay? So this is all from my side. Let's meet each other again tomorrow, okay? And about that I was saying to you about the Ask Me Anything session, right? Please prepare your questions. We will be holding up an Ask Me Anything section. Ask Me Anything session. You can ask any of your doubts in the how to prepare, what kind of books you want to use, right? Everything I will clear in a separate session, okay? So let's end.